PR Connections Radio presents.
Hello. It's not your fault or mine, but together, you and I, and Lorrie Simunovic, who's back here for I think it's our 6th show, we can do something about it. Stay tuned. Voices of humanity, we need to hear your voices. We need to hear your voices. I like it. I really do. I should redo that song. I don't know, bring a band in and do it, or something. Hey, Lorrie. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Lorrie Simunovic. It's so nice for you to be here again with me. We have a lot to talk about, don't you think?
Sure.
She's not shy. Her work is not shy. So she may be, but those people, those are deep waters. Anyway, I love this show because it came out of something called double consciousness, 2 streams of thought, 2 social identities. And that gap in the middle is the struggle that a huge group of people on the planet have had. Those that are descendants of the sub-Saharan trade, transatlantic slave trade, apartheid, colonization, imperialism, and how they show up and why they show up, how they show up in the 21st century. And I love this conversation because I started this work because my life was interrupted in a wonderful way when I found out one day that I was really Black. That I was not white at all. My father's mixed race, and he married this beautiful African woman who is my mommy. And can't you tell? But I'm telling you, I'm being silly in a good way. But when we came here, we assimilated so much because you want your kids to fit in, and of course, when I started to get locks, because my locks are pretty long, I've had them for many years. And when I started to get my locks, my dad was, and my brother and sister says I'm his favorite, but he was like a little bit put off by this because this was not the thing to do because you couldn't get a job. And, who wants all that culture up in their workplace? So I really started this work. I was asleep for a long time. We all do things that are culturally appropriate and such. And even with people that come from the culture, the ethnicity, we do a lot of things that look the part. But then when you look back at the history and what has happened to this people, I look back one day and I tell you, we were talking about it a little bit last show with Lorrie here, that I started to do the research on this and I turned off some of this stuff and I just wept. It was an actual video by Dr. Joy DeGruy that I encourage everyone to really take a look at. It's an hour and 20 minutes and change, and it will transform your space. If it doesn't, I shudder to make a comment about that because I had to turn it off and weep. And then I went into further research and I turned some of the stuff I was learning. I wept like a baby when I realized what they did to our baby, somebody that could have been my great somebody, So that really pushed me forward, woke me up to say, listen, enough of the over assimilation. Let's get it together, own who you are. And then I understood that's why in so many areas of my life, I had so many challenges with myself, internalized oppression, etc. So we're going to get into some of that. Lorrie Simunovic does this work, has done it for many years, has bodies of work and research. And a lot of that is why we connected. It was a friend of mine that referred her to me. And that is why we're here today. And we really want to get into it. On the flyer, what did we have? We had some objective. Did you want me to get into that right away, Lorrie?
Sure.
Just to, I just want to share some of that with you. Now, we would desire so much. We're working, and I know Lorrie's doing some work. I'm doing some work all the time. I get up in the morning and I, kind of say, my name is Sandra McKechnie and I am challenged with double consciousness. And that 2 streams of thought, 2 social identities is reconciling your African, Canadian, African, American, African, German, however you present yourself in whatever nation that you are a part of, reconciling that to your African, beyond Africa self, okay? And having a total sense of self. And We don't say, we won't say in terms of, I was going to wear the scarf. What do you think? Maybe not. Anyway, I thought it would be cute, but let's not overdo. But yes, so reconciling that is so huge, and there's so many pieces to it. And so we're striving to stay with some really clear objectives, so that we would have something to take away. And it's how we're thinking and how we are processing daily, and the internalized oppressed self of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. There's a number of people on that rung, and I just want you to be aware. Classification of races was a huge thing by Johann Blumenbach, Carl von Linnaeus, these pseudoscientists that measured heads and our noses, all of that stuff, buttocks, the whole thing. And people like Darwin and his cousin there, Francis Galton, like these individuals, these eugenists, these people that this Aryan race type of mentality, pure race and all of that. So it's come through the time warp. Here we are in the 21st century, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, way back here, way back before slavery, and say we're in the cusp of slavery. Well, there are people today that are descendants of slave massa, people today that are descendants of those slaves, and what happened and how that looked. So we are just wanting to press into some of that, and it's about how we are thinking, how we are processing our thought processes when we think of our biases. Do we just let it pass and say, it's not my fault, I wasn't there, who cares? But I noticed with my friends and people in my life that if one of my friends, white, marry black, or associates or affiliates marry somebody black, and they have their children, grandchildren, then there is an invested interest, because they're very concerned about their babies who will present in the road as black, and that are concerned about them being accosted, being carted, being tased, being somebody putting their knee on their neck and killing them dead. So this is really important stuff, especially to those that have an invested interest, as I said. Lorrie, once again, big welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me again. A pleasure for you to be here. And I know that we are working on this ourselves. That's why we are here. So whatever shows you're watching, those individuals, hopefully they are working on this themselves, because that's when you're going to get the sort of that, what do I say? That genuineness, that connectivity. It's going to become reciprocal without us even talking to each other. It's just going to come through the lens. All right. So this is Lorrie's work that we're dealing with here. Very much of it is sympathetic with what I do. But we're going to get into it. These were our learning objectives. We had a flyer gone out, and these were 3 of them that were on there. And then the body of the work has so much. This is like the umbrella. Isn't that what you were saying, Lorrie? It really is like the umbrella of everything. And there's so much work. So number 1, develop a critical understanding of the history and impact of Eurocentricity. Number 2, developing critical consciousness and cultural humility. Promoting social justice and equity. Can we go back to number 1? Lorrie, I can read it, but it's up to you.
Sure.
Develop a critical understanding of the history and impact of Eurocentricity. Can you nutshell that, or what do you think?
Well, I guess Eurocentricity is very similar to whiteness. It centers all things European, socially, Western Europe. Is that right? When you talk about colonization, assimilation in that specific context, both violently and non-violently, in various ways. It's about making all that this European way of being in the world is at the center, and everything else is at the margins, right? That's the simplest way. And tell me if you agree or disagree, because I know you've got your own conceptualizations on this. Sorry?
That sounds about right to me, for sure.
Okay. And so, socially, religiously, culturally, these are the things that get rewarded and punished, depending. And within that, there are intersections of power. So although patriarchy is across all cultures, right? But there's patriarchy, which is akin to male supremacy. There's racism. There's misogyny. There's various intersections of power that keep people in their places in their ranks. It's a system of up and down.
Mm.
Intersections of up and downs, right? So if people are shut out because of the color of their skin, people are shut out because of, their culture and so on. All of
Yes.
that's within a Eurocentric framework. I'm oversimplifying it now. There's also privilege, and so depending on what piece of the hierarchy you're in, that's how Eurocentricity is actually run and maintained.
Mm-hmm.
Colonization
Absolutely.
is and coloniality, which I learned from you, is both. It's ideological, it's individual, and it's systemic.
Mm.
It's a huge project.
It's that, it's fascinating. There's so many offshoots to that. And one of them, as I think about it, intersections with intersections here, is this whole people coloring their skin, this whole, and colorism to boot. What was that show? It was on Netflix for a while. It was called Skin. I think I felt some real trauma when I watched it. You know it in your heads, partly, but when you see these ladies, precious babe women of color, that are feeling, it's not even something you're just going out and saying, I'm going to buy this and color my skin. It's coming from within. Okay. So that thing that was passed, that hatred that was passed, and then it attaches itself to self and to the individuals that it was intended for. And anybody that was not, part of the dominant, so-called dominant group. I don't like so much language sometimes, but it's all we have at the moment. But we on the show, especially with Lorrie and a number of my guests, we want to really, that's why we like to go into it. So we're not just using the word supreme and dehumanization and all the language without really, what does it have to do with me every single day that I wake up? But yeah, so when I think about it, I think of the results that is, what is manifested, you know what I mean? As a result of that dominance and that Eurocentricity, I think that's really interesting. And so the other one, so that's our first one. We're going to try and actually go into we're going to move on today, but we just wanted to make sure you had this. And the second one, developing critical consciousness and cultural humility. What do you have to say about that? Can you nutshell that one?
So critical consciousness is going in deeper on all those levels that I just mentioned, ideologically, systemically, and individually, and depending on one's location, because we all have places of privilege and places of oppression, depending on how you define that. And critical consciousness, it's kind of this ongoing, there's an authenticity, but that, if you want to do this work, that you can live in, but there's also a critical authenticity. Right. And that critical authenticity, again, can play itself out on three levels. We can be courageous institutionally. We can be courageous individually. We can be courageous individually. So, for example, if I have biases and assumptions that I'm not even aware of, right? So when somebody says, oh, a nephew is marrying a Southeast Asian man, and then now, because I've been in the works for so long, somebody might ask, it's happened more than once. Well, what term should I use? And I'll say it's just self-identification. You ask, but then it's kind of awkward to ask the person, right? So you have these kind of difficult conversations, and in critical consciousness, that's a part of it. And so that simple example would be, well, why do you need to know? Like if you're politicized and you're working on unpacking something, or you maybe doing some work around that, but would you say to that person, would you tell me that she's marrying a white person? And then people that are on the path of doing their own critical consciousness, oh yeah, of course, that's so deep within me, I don't even know why I'm asking it. So then you go in deeper and you say, okay, why are you asking it? Right?
Because you wouldn't mention it. You mean if the person perhaps you wouldn't mention if the person.
So if a friend comes up and says, "Oh, my nephew is marrying a Southeast Asian man," for example, or an African man, that often whites, when they talk to each other, that will get said. Well, they've never said to me, "Oh, they're marrying a white guy."
I hear you.
Right. So I mean, that's an over simplification. That's family, but in systems, then we have to sort of look at that Eurocentricity and how we're not saying all things European are bad. We're saying the domination piece, the taking up too much space piece, the not sharing power. So it's
Yeah.
a lifelong process,
Yes,
and the cultural
definitely.
humility is kind of moving over and working in relationship where my culture, our culture, is not central to all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's funny because I'm thinking now, you know, something always comes up when we start doing this, how you know, people will say they don't see color and so forth, and people get upset about that. And I understand that. But I also think that if that is going to be fed in a really amazing way, like if people are watching this through these kind of shows and you stay with us, you're going to see how beautiful part of that can be true. In that, when you see me coming, you know enough about my culture, you know enough about my people, right? That you may say, oh, Sandra, she works with me. And it's going to be okay for you to say, yes, she works with me, blah, blah, blah. And you may not even mention Black, or you may just to identify, oh, she's got that lovely brown skin. You know, she always loves to tie up her hair, blah, blah, blah. Great. But it's nice for us to actually get to the point, to me, this is like a dream come true, where we're not distant. I'm not off in the distance where it's like, oh yeah, that black girl, because we have been so taught about what to think about each other. I'm taught how to think about my Indigenous brothers and sisters. I'm not taught to go and ask them and talk with them and to go humbly with humility and say, I need to learn. I haven't had the opportunity. And I guess genuinely I wasn't interested, just looking after my own self, my own needs and my people, and, you know, but to actually have an opportunity for people to know me and see me coming, that's Sandra, and feel comfortable enough. And there's no fear, there's no trepidation, or there's no, even though, you know, I might, certain things said, I may get offended, and you respect me. I respect you, your lineage, our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Getting somebody on the show, I was saying to you, you know, we've got some nations coming through here. My Korean brother that came on had no clue about him and what he felt being adopted after the war, and, you know, Korean gentleman. And I really got a little bit of an understanding of what that felt like. So just getting to know people and eliminating a lot of the, right, because you understand what happened back in the time warp. Just an understanding even in your head. Am I making sense?
Absolutely. So I mean, that's an example of you not knowing about a so-called other culture. But if we don't come at it from we come at it from curiosity of just trying to get to know each other, a non-assumptiveness, like I don't know, right? I'm not saying we say that. I mean, I'll say it. I don't care, right? I mean, I do care, but I mean, even as something as simple as I read a lot, I have a fairly good vocabulary, but often people will use words that I don't understand, and I'll ask, or I'll just look it up on Siri in the moment, and I'm supposed to be embarrassed by that. And no, like this is a lifelong learning process. So in terms of, there's like a non-assumptiveness and curiosity, not as other, but as in getting to know each other on all these three levels that I mentioned, like ideologically, systemically, and individually.
That's why I love that. I love the number two. Number one, again, was develop a critical understanding of the history and impact of Eurocentricity. Number two was developing critical consciousness and cultural humility. That's what we were just talking about there. You know? Yeah. That humility, that place where my friends can now go, especially when I started doing these trainings, double consciousness, 2Bs, and people are showing up. You know, it's okay. We have to affirm people because they come on with the cameras on. You know, that 2 years we were all behind the cameras, 2-3 years. But just saying it's okay. But once they got to understand, okay, this is not about, they've come out, you know, we all came out like little children out of this closet. This is not about blame. Nobody's going to try and, you know, harm me with their words. And I got that. We got it. And once we got past that, there was this opportunity to people say, okay, so now I'm getting to know. It's not about what I was taught by my grandmother or my grand and somebody that caught me. Shh, don't talk about it. They'll get upset, or all of that kind of dissipated, and we were able to participate as human beings, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
that's why I love that point.
Tell me that point again. I really want to hear it. Could you?
Yes, I really, you know, I love these things. I get going.
No, what you
Developing
just said. Sorry,
Sorry.
what you just said. I want to hear that again.
Oh, what I just said. Yes, this was about the cultural humility. It was like when people, when I'm doing the trainings and people come on and they have their cameras on, and there's this sort of real fear almost that it's, oh, I can't open my mouth. This one girl, I love her, but she was like, I don't know what to say. I don't, just be yourself. Right. You know, this is a little bit of like a course. So there was this, after we got through all of that, the beginning part, it was like a real humility setting where they understood that people started to understand, like myself, that it's not really, we're not here to do, we want to give you something really logical that makes sense. We want you to understand as if you were going to a doctor and he needed all your information. You have to go back in the past and give your psychiatrist, your therapist, all this information. We want you to have that information. Come with me through the time warp and get that information, and let's come back and talk about it. And then after that, there was this humility because people started to recognize, wait a minute, I really didn't know this. Exactly. So what am I guilty about? Things are passing me and I don't even know what they are. I can't even identify them. Wow. Because I didn't know this. And that was an awakening. That's why I love that point. That whole humility piece. Room
to breathe, but also to make mistakes. It's like it's okay to make mistakes because it's clear. It's like the example that I gave with I could actually see it on their faces. Oh, aha, yeah, I probably wouldn't ask about that in that specific context about that person's social location if they're white. Like, and you're going even deeper, you're going into the history. And even though it's painful, they're starting to feel safer and braver because you're on a learning curve together.
Oh, it changes the mentality of everybody. Yeah. When I know something more about my Indigenous brothers and sisters than I thought I knew.
Yeah.
Right. When they're telling me how they feel safe and how I should speak to them in certain contexts and in situations, I want to hear it. I want to know instead of avoiding you because, oh, I can't, no, I want to know and come in humility to know. So this developing critical consciousness and cultural humility, very important. Love it. And the third one, promoting social justice and equity. Does that go without saying, or do you want to nutshell that in a minute? That's pretty much.
I guess that comes down to just do it. But I mean, do it in a way where you're step up, but step back too.
Right? I love it. It's like a waltz.
Yes, I might be in I'm not now, but I might be in an organization where I have, I'm writing policies and that kind of thing. But then I don't speak for communities of color. You get and it's not just because the person has black skin or brown skin or whatever. It's because this person has knowledge, because like you said, we've all been assimilated in different ways.
Yeah.
We're all learning about our own cultures and how we intersect and harm or contribute to the good of others. And so the goal has to be, I can't be imposing my values when it comes to social justice or equity or equality.
Mm-hmm.
That's defined by the communities that are most affected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't even want to say give back, because it was something at certain points in history, I suppose we could say give power. But I mean, it's here. Knowledge makes us so free. Truth really frees up an individual, when you get to that point. And I would have never imagined, audience, I wouldn't have imagined. Thank you to those that have subscribed, and please bring more subscribers. This content is great, I must say. It's important. We were listening to it the other day and we thought, this show's really good. It's not bad at all, And I'm learning and relearning, even as I listen back for a few of them and so on. So it's really good. But what was I saying? I said something and then I went someplace else.
We went to the third objective and we talked about social justice and equity. And I kind of responded to, that's, you want to encapsulate that it was.
I chat a lot. No. But so these are our three objectives: developing a critical and critical understanding of the history and impact of Eurocentricity, developing critical consciousness and cultural humility, promoting social justice and equity. And it's really a beautiful umbrella for where we want to go, we would like to go, and what we would like to share. And I'm sure many of you can really share this. I mean, there's a lot of you out there. There's some giants out there doing this work. And I hope that you will be able to continue doing this work, because it's people think how they think. And what we can do that's very powerful is to, yes, do our research, connect with other people, collaborate. Reciprocity, huge for Lorrie and I. That's really amazing. And, and I may not always agree with her or her with I, but with myself, but we know at the end of the day, we definitely want something very similar, very, very similar, very sympathetic. So did you want to move on to our wonderful piece? Again, this is Lorrie's work. So we're going, you know the page, right?
Page 9. Yeah.
And this was part of our whole thing, getting uncomfortable, the last 3 shows or so, getting uncomfortable. We ended off last time, 2 weeks ago. Where were we? We ended off, I'll tell you which one.
The responsibility one.
Yes, I think it was admit to myself. Yes, we had touched that. This is heart and gut wrenching work, and if I do not take it that seriously, I must leave the work. This was part of Lorrie's. This is her piece. Okay,
that was the last time, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Heart and gut wrenching work. Can you touch on that briefly, and we'll move along?
Sure. It's not easy work. Like the self-reflective piece, when we're going to make mistakes for the rest of our lives, because we've been trained in many different ways to dominate, right? To be the boss. Like, that's why I have a bit of a problem with the term boss, right? And all the connotations with it, especially as it relates to enslavement. And then when we realize that those very pieces are within us, and it's not just in terms of race, it's intersections of power and privilege. So unpacking those pieces are hard. And when you see the impact, similar to yourself, there was a period where I was doing a lot of reading about various Indigenous nations and the history of colonization. I would just put the book down and I would cry, not out of guilt, but out of like, I'm so not impressed with my country, that these are the roots of my country, right? And I was born here. And even more so, the pain and the destruction and the erasure, and it's just hard to take. So, and then in the everyday work, as you said, through the generations, like DeGray does she wrote a book called The Woman That You Were Speaking About, Dr. DeGray, about post-traumatic enslavement, right? It's directly related to trauma. It's like a betrayal, because whether it's family or whether it's like a system, the system is betraying huge, like there's a whole area of study by Dr. Fry around betrayal trauma. And then she conceptualizes the piece around the internalization as betrayal blindness. You have to be blind to that betrayal because you're trying to fit in. And the double consciousness is a way of, unpacking that. So all of that is very uncomfortable work. And it's like, in your workplace, in the store, like, should I step up? Should I step back? Like it's a constant learning.
Is it ever? Because the pushback on it is heavy. It's almost insidious.
Yeah.
And because people go somewhere else because they're not able, I guess, or don't want to, or whatever that looks like, to connect with really what happened back there. And that takes time. I mean, I guess you got to be ready for that. I don't know. But to connect with, that your great somebody, was hanging people on trees and, while their eyes were bulging out, and then, and bringing a beer and some picnic food to eat. This is not easy, And then there's my people, and there's people, dark-skinned people, brown and black people. And it's challenging for them to touch it as well. It's, as I said, I wept. You weep when you really look at what happened, So we are here, and all of us, I think there's a lot of us that want the same thing. I got white up in my family, got white up in yours. Right? And generationally speaking, intergenerationally, this is what it is, right? So we want a better world for our children, for our coworkers, for our family members. We really want some people to start thinking differently. So it's one by one. Each one can reach one. You reach somebody when you, and I have some friends that are doing this now, and I think, they kind of feel maybe I've indoctrinated them in some way. It's in a good way. Because now it's sort of a part of them, as I would want for my Korean brothers and sisters, my indigenous. I don't mention white here for obvious reasons, but it doesn't mean that there's not in generation. I mean, as you see, Lorrie sitting here, she's had her challenges and is working on and have overcome and is working things through in her own life and has her own story. So we respect that. But I am also talking at this compilation, this years and hundreds of years of, I stand in my lane. Our people just classified, which is foolishness, but it happened, right? At the bottom of the rung for hundreds of years, and what that looks like. So that's what we want people to think about, right? Instead of saying to my indigenous brothers and sisters, oh, come on, everybody has the same opportunities, because this is what we hear a lot. And it's hard to get rid of that. Everybody has the same opportunities, but how do you think of our men when you get into an elevator as an older white woman? Are you grabbing your pearls because you've heard that they're super predators, And have you looked into what that really means? Are they super predators? Who are the real super predators? So we just have to kind of look at those things. But I digress. Let's move along. That's another show. Okay. So we ended there, and now we're going to go on to some juicy stuff. See, I'm trying not to get a late start because we want to get into the meat and potatoes here. So the next point is, after this is heart and gut wrenching work, and I take it directly, so I do not misquote, butcher her work. Okay. So Lorrie's work. So the next one is, once white people become informed about racism and whiteness, then we have the opportunity to take an informed sense of responsibility for our part in the larger structural issues. What say ye, Lorrie? Well, one more time. Let me read it one more time. I love to hear it myself. Once white people become informed, you're getting some information today, right? Or any other thing you've jumped into, webinars, etc. Once white people become informed about racism and whiteness, then we have the opportunity. I love that. You have the opportunity to take an informed sense of responsibility for our part in the larger structural issues. An informed sense of responsibility. Love that, Lorrie.
Thank you. So it's all about responsibility can mean, you're responsible. You must do this, right? For me, responsibility is responsibility, the ability to respond in an informed way that's informed by the communities, by the experiences of the communities that we're working with. So that at every level, like historically, like who's telling the story, because pieces of the story get erased, as I'm sure you know. When it's written by somebody who might have a more limited view of what really happened, right? Or being an apologist for what happened. We're all human. Or anyway, I won't go there right now. So in terms of that quote, some examples of that is to, again, that's implicit in the actual quote, is to educate ourselves, is to read books, go on webinars, attend meetings. You kindly invited me to a very important meeting. I don't know, it's 3 weeks from now or 4 weeks from now. And I know that when I go there, I'm going to learn. Asking whether well, you invited me, so I do belong for that one. But if it's my place to even be there. And acknowledging privilege and my own privilege and biases, that's part of that responsibility, right? Sort of digging in, and the best way is to get feedback, to get a mentor, not somebody just because they look a certain way, but because they have the knowledge, right? So when you reach out, when you talk to your friends with your social and cultural capital, you say, like, what's your experience? You've told me this before. What's your experience with this person? What's their what's their, not so much position, but can they embrace multiple perspectives, right? And so privilege isn't just about the perks. It's also about how easy we walk through the world. So if you haven't got barriers, like there are people who might have class privilege, white privilege, like the story you were telling the other day, where your sister friend doesn't have to worry. Like, she just goes through the world with ease, right? There might be things that are uncomfortable, but it's not the same when you talk about it in the anti-racist or anti-oppression context.
Right.
The piece, I love when you've said this more than once, when you go to restaurants that are from various communities, eat food from various communities, is supporting policies, but there's also, like, again, a step up and step back piece. So if we're dealing specifically with anti-racist work, because that the essay you're reading from, or lecture that you're reading from, is about the white person's role in anti-racist. I already forgot the title. I wrote it 18 years ago.
That's okay. We're entitled to forget. That's a long time ago for us. Okay.
Oh, so where was I? Right. So I might step up and support a policy, but the voice is not mine, because you have to identify what the problems are. So if you have an organization that the three main problems are homophobia, racism, and let's say sanism or mentalism, right? Against people with mental health problems, then those are the first three you start with, right? Depending on, because that's an accident waiting to happen. Something terrible is going to happen if the institution doesn't have some courage to deal with that. And so how can I contribute to that? What is my responsibility? What is my place, both collectively and individually? And what am I willing to put forward so that I don't contribute more pain to communities? And I've said this before, Peggy McIntosh, the invisible knapsack, right? She has more than
Peggy. Love me some Peggy, girl. Yeah.
It really talks about the things that white people don't have to worry about versus people that are classified as Black or as racialized as other. Another beautiful one is, I don't know if you know it, the Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie from Nigeria. Oh my God, it's a TED Talk, just beautiful.
Oh, I got to do that. I didn't. You told me about her before. Is that a link you got? Just send me the link.
I haven't done the link yet, but she's written many books. She's got some beautiful books, but the Single Story is a beautiful place to start unpacking on an ideological level. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm going all over the place.
Oh, that's okay. I'll bring you back. But we're good. We're good. You're really dealing with the part after we take that inform ability. Is that it?
Yeah.
Then responsibility, response. I love that. What did you say? Response. Break that down again.
Ability, the ability to respond.
Yes, the ability to respond.
And the only way that's going to happen is if you're informed.
Definitely. We had talked about that. Oh my gosh. Just knowing and understanding a few things, the 101, 411, on some of this stuff. And your part, what is your part? How do people look at what is my part in the larger structural issues? Because that's really what you were talking about just now. What is my part? What am I doing or not doing? Right. Or want to do? How does that look? How aware am I? Awareness in action. Maybe I go to the food bank and, but then there's people that go to the food bank because they have awareness. They have maybe family members. They have people they know. They work in this sector, and so and just being aware of what's happening before we're actually doing the going to the continent to start the church and build the school. It's nice if we kind of.
That's a beautiful example, the food bank and housing. For me, my vision is that housing and food is a right. The fact that we need food banks, don't get me wrong, we need, crisis housing, we need more, etc. So I'm not saying don't do it, but that it would be nice if that was a stopgap where everybody has food, right? Mm-hmm. So if that's my vision or our vision or the vision of communities that are disproportionately experiencing hunger as compared to communities of privilege, that's not to say that, white people aren't poor. Yes, that low income, I'm not supposed to use that.
Right.
Yeah. So, and when you talk about something like amplifying voices, it's not me amplifying your voice.
Mm-hmm.
It's me making sure that if I'm doing a seminar or something like that, that it's not a bunch of same location, speaking for others as opposed to people speaking for themselves as collectives. And yeah,
we were talking about, yes, even when we talk about equity and social justice, etc. And or people may say, well, white people may say, excuse the bywords, but just so you know what I mean, just putting it out there straight. But white people may say, we were poor. I'm from how many generations of poverty? So we're talking about this as a whole people, a whole group of people. So, and even though that's the case, absolutely. It's the coloniality of the mind issue that I'm concerned about. It's colonial. We can decolonial people, the coloniality. So colonization, decolonizing people. But what happens when it's done? Oh, okay. So stop talking about them. Don't think about them like that again. Oh, geez. So I didn't realize I'm doing that. But what is your mind saying? What are we carrying with us? Coloniality. That's still a thing, then.
Right. There's that. And sometimes that statement that you just said is, oh, like white people have it bad too. And we're not saying they don't.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, we don't, right? Like, so poverty is a huge issue and we want to work at that too. So sometimes people work with their own communities. Sometimes people work with, like I tend to go intersectional. I want to contribute to all. So when a person, I've heard that in the classroom more than once, and also there is the coloniality piece, and that exists. And usually the classroom people talk to each other because I always worked in an adult education context, inserted as a learner also, and a facilitator. So yeah, that piece is valid, what you just said. And we're not talking about that now. Right now, we're talking about racism. We're talking about poverty in the afternoon, right? And poverty can be across. And if you compare, like there's a study that I was a community mental health consultant at the time. It's called Living on the Ragged Edges by Dr. Jasmine Zine. And what was being studied was Muslim and Hispanic communities that were homeless or underhoused. And that even within that population, Muslim people and Hispanic people couldn't get into the housing. So when we actually did the research, she had a really strong understanding of how to even do research in a way that doesn't harm. So we made sure that we got people in so the people that were being shut out, because you could see by the stats that there was a disparity between people that were homeless and people that were homeless from different communities, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So there was a higher percentage of people from Muslim and Hispanic communities that were homeless, that couldn't even access the services for homelessness. The proportionality was higher, that they could not. So it's very similar, like with 87, Sanara Tabani talks about in her third book, 87% of the world, I've said this on this podcast before, is owned by white men. That doesn't mean white men are good or bad. It's a stat. So if you get into the hierarchy of oppression, I think that's really dangerous. So poverty is a form of oppression and how people get treated. That's true. And this is what we're talking about now. Does that make sense what I just said?
Yes. And it brought me to this too. I love this. It brought me to, again, that whole thing. I'm going to read it again. I love it. Once white people become informed about racism and whiteness, then we have the opportunity to take and inform, the we is Lorrie putting herself in there as well. We have the opportunity to take an informed sense of responsibility for our part in the larger structural issues. And, people marry, you fall in love. That's the way we taught to do things. There's also culture, ethnicity, and all of that comes into that. So I married white. A lot of people marry white, right? And then one day I woke up. I woke up in a good way, in that we're not together now. But the wonderful thing about this is knowing, being honest and saying I was assimilated in a certain way, right? To be white, right? So people that are assimilated to be white and want to be white because white is right. Brown stick around, black get back. Who wants blackness is very inconvenient. So when I woke up, though, of course, I say that because I have definitely gone into this thing and done some work on myself and recognized not that I wasn't supposed to marry this white guy, but the challenge is knowing who you are. So you, again, here we are. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, that informed choice, right? It's just like I want white people. You can say in a lot of areas, wants everybody. But specifically, I hear what Lorrie's saying here. I had to take responsibility for my part in the larger structural issues. Knowing who you are, there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Neely Fuller, worked for a while. She's passed now, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. These are the people that changed my world. Okay, hey, sat under some of my elders, some of my brothers. This is why I always caution white people before you touch black men, our patriarchy, because we got to know what we're doing. We got to understand who these people are. They've got ethnicity, culture, faith, huge for our people. So it's important that we know. So my thing is, you marry white. It's all good. Everybody's marrying everybody. Whatever people want to do, they got to do. And that's cool. But what I recognize about myself as I spoke to other sisters and stuff, right? That if you know who you are, if you don't know who you are, like Dr. Lily Fuller puts it, then there is like that, is it Stockholm syndrome, or whatever it is? He likens it. He goes far, aligning yourself with your captors. Because again, that dominant, right? That subjugation, that's like a default button that you will press, that you will be going to if you don't know who you are culturally, your ethnicity. You don't understand double consciousness and what happened. Once you understand some of that, you can make an informed choice about where you're going to go from there. That's why I also love that point. Does that make sense to you, Lorrie?
So I want to understand a little bit more about that. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go, because there are a lot of white women that I know who are married to black men. And when I see them in relationship, I know that they haven't done a lot. I want to be careful here. They're not informed. I'm just trying to be careful how I see it. And some of the conflict, especially when they've come to me as couples, is based on not having a strong understanding of the history and the experiences of, say, black men, right?
And you're absolutely, and the default will be whiteness, because that's how we have been assimilated to think. And that is the issue. It's not that you've made a choice. Oh, you're wrong. You married a white person. What's wrong with you? Our people, our women, sometimes this is a bane of our existence. Look at that, another white woman. And it's knowing what you do private and all that, who you want to marry, that's your business. But I say first, even a couple of my friends, right, want their black boys to marry black women, not because we are racist. We can't remember, racism has to do with power. We don't collectively have any power. We can have whatever it is, discrimination, whatever, right? But the power here is you marry somebody after you have come from a nation of people, hundreds of years of oppression, right? So now you're going into something with someone that doesn't have to really navigate that in their mind 24/7. And you're going to still stifle it. I know what I'm talking about. And you will get compliments even in that relationship. I used to get compliments from my, so-called better half. Oh, she's not like them.
Mm-hmm.
So you are being encouraged to come under something that's very dominant.
Mm-hmm.
And because I saw myself, I can see myself now that I was doing it. Now I woke up, the alarm went off. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, where has the time gone? so much to do.
So that's again those three pieces. You're not talking about the whiteness when you say, oh, it's about whiteness. It's a structure. It's about dominance. It's about Eurocentricity. Sometimes
that's why I love your work, girl.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Sometimes there is a wake-up call for some of the white women that I've met when their children start growing up. That's when sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And I don't want to say they get it or they don't, because I don't know their story deep enough, but I'm talking about this in kind of brushstrokes. So yeah, if you're going to walk, if I was to, I'm not married, but if I was to get married and my partner spoke another language, the first thing that I would want to do, because language is so important, is learn the language if I was capable.
Yeah, and honestly,
so let alone everything else that we're talking about. Yes. If I want to be in an intimate relationship, because his family's speaking this language. In my case, I'm heterosexual. So, yeah.
But think about this, though. In that case, some women that don't, where their sons, their brown children, that will present black, no matter what you say, when they come up, when a police officer pulls them over.
That's right.
And those children, the mom, that movie, whatever it is, Big Fat Greek Wedding. I mean, who's the man's the head, but you turn in the head. You're the neck. You're the nurturer. So who is growing up? How those boys are going to grow up? Yeah. Not that they can't have a beautiful white mommy, but if someone could kind of interrupt that a little bit and say, okay, girl, you got to prepare these boys because they're looking a little dark up in the sun today. Mm-hmm. So, try and get them to a place where that, it's not going to be traumatizing for them if something like that goes down. They have a little altercation with a policeman, because it can happen, right? So it's that you are the nurturer as a white woman, and you've got these beautiful babies in your home. And there was a woman that came up to me on one of the trainings, beautiful woman, beautiful sister. She married a white man. She said, oh my gosh, now I've heard this. I really want my boys, these are mixed race boys. I want them to marry black. And I said, girl, if you got a good husband and he white, you might not have any control over these children. They might want to marry somebody like their daddy, so you just got to do what you can to keep them in a place. So I said, put on some of this content, the content from the training, and put on some of these videos, put them up in the house and let them be aware, at least to be prepared for whatever comes their way, I love this converse. Yeah. We have some fun up in here. Hey, I want everybody to subscribe, okay? And get people to subscribe. People are out here buying, Lorrie, people are buying, what are they? They're buying subscribers. I know, I'm so naive. Like, apparently people are paying lots of money to buy subscribers. Mm-hmm. And my fear is, what if they don't stay? What if I buy 1,000 of them, right? And then next week they all don't subscribe. I just think it's ironic. I think it's funny the way the world's going. But anyway, let's get back to our stuff. I love this stuff. So we had covered, again, we were just chatting about this. I just want them to be aware of the work. Once white people become informed about racism and whiteness, then we have the opportunity to take an informed sense of responsibility for our part in the larger structural issues. Being aware of a lot of this now, wasn't aware. So now we're talking about knowledge. Now I'm aware of some things. Instead of blaming myself, like a lot of my people, as I taught with some of my sister girls, just thought something was wrong with them. What's wrong with us? No, like we said before, right? We talked about this. What was the line?
Care. You don't ask somebody what's wrong with you. You ask what happened to you.
What happened to you? Nothing is wrong with you. Something happened to you. And thank God for his goodness. Okay. We can come all the way back to that. Look at it, weep. Sometimes we're going to need a white out. Remember that, but we're going to be okay. Lorrie, you can't believe it. We got to one, I think the first point that we were going to do today, we got to it. I just love it. I enjoy it so much. And I'm learning and growing with you guys. Please subscribe and share and send it out to people. I genuinely believe that this can touch lives, move hearts to change. Lorrie, how can I say thanks?
You're
for
welcome.
how much I'm enjoying this content, really and truly. If you would like to be a part of the show, please get in touch with me. It does have to fit with the show. But if you're out there and you really know that you've got something to share in regards to double consciousness, voices of humanity, this is the name of the show. I'd love to hear from you. Lorrie, what would you like to say to our people? Anything inspiring to leave them with on this beautiful Friday in Ontario?
I'm happy to meet you. Thank you for being here.
That's you're not going to get much more than that. You got to get her work. And so you're going to get a lot. Oh, this has been good. Okay, we're going to go to a little commercial and we'll be right back. Hi there, I'm Sandra McKechnie from Double Consciousness. Double Consciousness looks like this: cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness trainings. I've been doing it for 4 years. We're going into our 5th year, or 41st time on Zoom, and we're doing it. Would love you to join us. The next thing that I do is I'm a certified life coach holding space for clients in the areas of cultural awareness and sensitivity, right? So people that may have a challenge and they just want some space, a consultation, coaching opportunity to unpack implicit racial bias. Everybody's welcome, and we would love to have you in the trainings or book a consultation. And we have a free opportunity, 15 minutes if you want to have a chat and get to know me and find out where you fit in that. The next thing that I do is I am a host for Voices of Humanity out of prconnectionsradio.com. If you want to be on my podcast and you're a fit, because it does have to fit with the show, has to complement the show and the network, I would love you to get in touch with me. And I'm also, from my heart, and I've always been a singer-songwriter, and I love this stuff. I love the singing. We put it in our trainings, our cultural sensitivity and awareness trainings. So sometimes I just sing just like this. You're all that I want. You are all that I need. And you brought me here when I can't find my way. You're all that I need. And you brought me here to pray. You should hear that with my keyboard player. It's to live for. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that helps you to know who Sandra McKechnie is. Take care. Bye for now. Oh, I wish I looked like her. I got to get something to pull this back. She's looking too young. I got to change it. I got an updated version I'll bring in. Oh my goodness, Lorrie, it's been a blast. I love it.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to chill out and order me a pizza. Oh, thank you guys. Shout out to Jelly Social. I collaborate with these beautiful people. I partner with them, and also Local Street. These are they do some wonderful networking and so much more. Anti-bias, anti-oppressive work, fabulous people. Jelly Social, just as it sounds, put you in some jelly and then social, and you'll find them on Facebook, okay? Wonderful group. And Local Street. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember, it's not your fault or mine, but together we can do something about it. Bye. Say bye, Lorrie.
Bye.